So next part of the project is this steel bar. Well, I've got two of them, but I'm just obviously one in the picture. And then what I'm planning on doing, like a few other people have done, you got this bolt and this bolt, and we're going to join that up to that fixing there, and then we're going to brace somewhere around here between the two. So we're going to something like that with a bend somewhere near the gearbox, and then it's going to come straight and come underneath. So I'm going to have a go at flattening this tube out so that I can then drill some holes through it, probably put some lightning holes in, and then ultimately these two are at different heights out of the engine. And I'm going to make some spaces so that it's sat parallel, and probably maybe put some threaded inserts in as well. But that's the next project. So hopefully this is the last time you're going to see that bit of tube straight and completely round. Let's see how we get on. So what I've done so far is squash the end of that tube, drilled a hole in it, and then welded it so it's all joined together. And then I've put a bend which is going underneath the gearbox, if you can remember that bit. I've marked out you can see that there to there, which is going to be, this piece is now going to have to be flattened, and this bit at the end I don't need, so I don't need to flatten that, so I'm going to chop that off. So this bit I managed to use a friend's hydraulic press, and we put something I'd made previously when I was an apprentice, which I'll show you in a bit, as a way of creating a bit of a radius edge on that. Sorry if you're all getting sick looking at that, but anyway, I'm now going to mark the end of the other tube out and drill that hole in and get them the same, and then I'll be able to use this one that's made as a pattern to bend the one that's still over there straight at the moment. Okay, so unfortunately I forgot to press the record button when I was bending it. One is a little bit better bent than the other one. I don't know how well you can see that. A little bit of a flat in the middle, but effectively two frames bent up. And then the markup is where I need to flatten off that section. And then we've got another couple of bits and bobs to do. And we'll have made some lower frame stays. There's a few more jobs to do on this particular part of the project, and hopefully it's really coming together. Right, so we're back on the Velocette project, and I think I might have promised to show you what I was doing in the way of squashing the end of the tube, but I've failed miserably in that. So basically I used a hydraulic press and some big bits of metal, one below, one above, and I managed to squash that down nice and flat. So what I've got to do, I've got to put a radius on the end. I need to mount it to the bike, fixing it with the bolt hole that's through there, and then I need to make up something so I can push it through the crankcases and mark a hole on either side, because the holes aren't even about that flat section. One's upper and one's lower, and I need to get them exactly right. So I'm going to go and do that off camera, and then I'll bring you back and I'll cut round the end together. We'll drill some holes, and then effectively I'm going to be making some sleeves which are going to go in here. If you can imagine, the crankcase is sat against that face, and you sleeve this side of the bolt on this side of the hole, or the holes that are going through, to space that off the engine. And there's a countersink or a counter bore on the engine crankcase as well, so it needs to be like a step top hat, and then I'll decide whether I'm going to weld it to that frame. Anyway, we're progressing, we're getting there slowly. Let's go mark some holes out and I'll come back. Right, so drill the holes. The bolt holes we're using are only 1/4 inch through the crankcase, so we can't, that's as big as they're going to get, so not going to be the strongest thing in the world. But I've measured it up, and I made some very, very rudimentary drawings. My technical drawing teacher at school would have a fit, but anyway, I know what I'm doing. So sort of 25mm OD, there's like I said, a counter bore into the crankcase, which is only about 5mm deep on the front. So I need to make two of those. I'm just trying to decide whether I'm going to make them out of aluminium. Probably will. Keep the weight down. And then I'm thinking about, so obviously this is all to do with strength. I know I'm not trying to make an iron bridge or anything, but what I'm considering is it would be nice if we made a nut that had a nice flat face on the outside of it, and a 1/4 inch nut is not going to really do much to resist the twisting motion, if there is any twisting motion. So I'm thinking I've got some hex bar left over from making the nuts for the spindle. Could maybe make a nice big nut with the 1/4 inch thread in it. And the other thing I'm thinking about is this tube I've bent. Again, I looked at lots of different ways of making this, and this is the way I chose to make it. So I'll put it down and talk and point at the same time. So this is quite strong now because it's like 2 pieces of material thick, and I'm going to weld up the end. But the weak point is through this actual bend. Or I think it's the weak point. So I'm thinking about cutting a triangle and making a gusset that would fit over the top, just to stop that bending this way. I don't know if I really need to do that, but it would make me happier having pushed it about with a vice. You can see I've pulled that now, so it's not square with the tube. It's actually tweaked in, and what I've done is I've also done the opposite on the other end. And the idea is, or the two places which I'm trying to join together aren't in line with each other, basically. So the frame needs to come from the back of the bike, come in, and then come this way onto the crankcase. Anyway, it'll become more apparent when I finally get this done and I show you it mounted to the bike, but that's where we've got to so far. So I've just been turning up the first of the spacers. So we got a 6.5mm hole, just a little bigger than 1/4 inch. And obviously got the step, so I just need to part that off, and then I need to make 2 of them. So hopefully, if the drawing didn't make any sense, the part will. What I've done is I've just made one set for one side at the moment. That's the sort of difference between the counter bores on the crankcases. So hopefully I've got it about right, but there's a little bit of material I can take off one or the other just to get them perfect. If it needs modifying, it's quite difficult to get the vernier in to measure the space for this one. But yeah, let's go and try it and see how we get on. So just so you can get a picture of what we're doing, those 2 bolts are what we're going to be bolting onto with the frame. That's obviously one of my spacers. That's another one. And I'm going to put the frame on. and hopefully they'll be parallel along that line at the same distance in or out. So let me do that, because I haven't got 3 pairs of hands, and I'll come back. And there it is. A lot of faffing about for not very much, but it's all those details that make all the difference. So I don't know if you can see, I've got a point on that bolt. That was what I used to push through the crankcases to bash onto this to give me the mark. So I got the holes. I've got to be honest, that was absolutely perfect, like a transfer punch. So what I was saying about the hex bar, I don't really want to be just pulling up this on that little nut. I'm going to make a bigger nut with, maybe it's only going to have a small thread, so clearly we're not going to be able to lean on it and go nuts, but I think it will be a way of spreading that and resisting any twisting. So what's left to do, I've got to clean that nose piece up, and then I'll weld that so it's all together. I might add some lightning holes, and I might also weld them, which will hopefully add a bit of strength. Not that it necessarily needs a bit of strength, and to be honest, it's probably going to be a styling thing more than anything else, but quite fancy doing that. And then, like I was saying before, maybe add a gusset over the top or underneath, or both, just to strengthen up that little area there. So, gusset time. So I folded that up and cut it up, and then cut some angles on it, and then what it's going to look like, if you can see, I've just sort of jury rigged that up for the moment, but it's going to get welded along here, and I've got a little step just there. Hopefully I'll be able to also stick a bead of weld on that. So that's the plan, to give it a little bit of strength. So I'm going to catch some dirt and puddle some oil in, I guess, but yeah, that's what I've come up with. All I've got to do now is work out I'm going to hold it while I weld it. So I'll bring you back after I've welded it on, and we'll see what sort of job I can make of that. So it's welded on. If you can imagine, this is upside down now, so we're looking at the bottom. And tied it in across to resist it that way. And I've got some long tacks down there. So I did wonder about seam welding it all the way along, but I don't think it's really going to make a lot of difference. So, one down, one to go. And then there were 2. So, gusset's welded on. I've only got 2 of the spacers, but you've seen them before. So, last thing, you're going to need to join this one to this one when they're at the right angle. So, I don't know if that's going to get it into this video or whether that's going to be another one. And to be fair, what I really need to do now is bolt all this up solid, and then I can mitre the ends of the tube and make a really nice job. And it really wants to be welded on the bike, ideally, would be the perfect scenario. So I need to get some proper bolts for the end, buy something or make something. I've still got to make the hex nuts or some spacers or something, whatever I'm going to do there to sort of stiffen that up a bit. Yeah, well, I've got to say I'm pretty happy. Hopefully you guys are happy. If you've made it all the way to the end of the video, thank you very much. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me have your comments, good or bad, whatever you think. Be interested to know. Okay, take it easy, see you soon.